Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Talking Real Estate with Champions Real Estate Team here at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Ambassador Real Estate Company. My name is Mark Wehner, the second team leader here at Champions Real Estate Team. Joining me today is Russ Williams with Williams Mortgage. We jump on here every Wednesday, give you a rundown what's going on in the real estate market over the last 7 days, and just kind of keep you in the loop of what's going on. And we always like to start out with a quick tip. Quick tip today is just kind of when you're thinking about purchasing a house, there's a lot of expenses that come into play with that. One of those is your utilities. So your gas, water, OPPD, MUD, if you're in the Omaha metro area, internet and that kind of stuff. So you can call, I know I do for all of my listings, is I call OPPD, MUD, the service provider, and basically, and get a 12-month average. Ultimately, yes, that's the average of the current people living there. The house may be vacant, but at least it can give you some kind of barometer, at least to have some expectations if you're, looking at your monthly payments and things like that. So that's one other thing. Other more in news, I know Russ has brought this up. I didn't even pay attention to what the weather's doing. I guess on Friday, it's supposed to be pretty chilly outside overnight. So if you do have maybe an older home and you have some of those water lines that are on the exterior of the house or the exterior walls, opening up those cabinets underneath to allow that airflow from the inside of the house just to hit that kind of exterior wall or those pipes underneath to hopefully, alleviate from any of that freezing. Obviously, if you have not disconnected your hose bibs from the exterior, maybe in those couple times when it got a little nicer, you went out and did some yard stuff for whatever reason, but make sure those things are disconnected. I was just over at one of my rental properties, so what was that last month, and saw that they had not disconnected theirs, and it was a huge chunk of ice, and got a nice little heat gun at the old Ace Hardware and went over and melted that ice. So hopefully see if there's any damages, when it comes springtime and stuff like that. So that's just a couple things there. So obviously, more pertinent information as far as the cold weather coming this weekend. Just be safe with that. And obviously, if you're looking at monthly payments and stuff, if that's very important to you, make sure that's another way you can kind of check on those. Some listing agents do that, and they provide that information at the listing at the houses. That's something I do. Not a lot of agents do that, surprisingly. You think you'd want to get as much information to that buyer as soon as possible so that they can make an educated decision. But that's something, if you find a house you absolutely love, you can kind of get a barometer of what those payments are on that side. So let's jump in on what's going on in the real estate market here in the Omaha metro area. Let me pull up our little graphics and give you those that enjoy the number aspect of it. Pulling up. There we go. Cool. So, all right, over the last 7 days, we had 530 new listings go live. We had 350 new contracts written, and we had 219 homes or happy new homeowners there in that regard. So that number's a little lower. So obviously, 30 days ago was basically we were at Christmas. So a lot of, there wasn't as many contracts written at that time. That closing time frame, pushing that out 30 days. That's probably why that number's a little lower. New contracts, that's up just a little bit from last week. And then our new listings is kind of about average of where we're at for this time of year. So yeah, we're starting to see some tick up on the new contracts written. We've seen some favorable things as far as rates gone below 6 a little bit. They kind of going up and down. Russ can touch on that more here in a couple minutes. But that's kind of getting some people, I think, off the fence. We have that 5 in part of that interest rate being 5%, 5.85, just under 6. I think that's just kind of a psychological thing for some people thinking, hey, it's a good time. It's below 6. Let's jump in and get in the market and see what's out there. So that's what we're seeing as far as, the activity day to day, 30,000 foot view here. Let me pull up the other graphic we use that just kind of keeps an idea of what's going on. So we have 3,643 homes in the Omaha-Lincoln area. So it's basically most of eastern Nebraska's MLS that's involved. There are agents that are involved in that. They're going to be putting all their listings there. So it's a good barometer of what's going there. So closer to home here in the Omaha metro area, we're just 2,008 active listings. 978 of those are basically going to be existing homes, and 1,030 is going to be your new construction. So we're seeing more new construction come on the market. So some of those houses that broke ground, in the November timeframe, they're get it framed up. They're putting those on the MLS to get those suckers get them moving. So 4.7 months supply of inventory. So we saw that went down. I think it was 5.1 last week. So we're kind of in that healthy market. We saw obviously 500 homes go on the market, 530, and then we had a 350 go off the market. So that's kind of attesting that, because last week we had 819 new listings, if I remember correctly, and then average sold price at 370. In that regard. So that's just kind of what's been sold over this last month in that regard. So that's kind of what we're seeing. I mean, nothing too crazy. I mean, it's basically kind of what we're normally seeing. Now obviously is a good time if you're thinking about selling. Give us a holler. We can kind of get in there and get a good game plan for you. Getting that house ready to rock and roll. Rather than waiting until March or April and saying, "Hey, we want to put our house on the market by the end of the month." Yes, we can do that absolutely, 100%. But it's going to be a little less stress and things of that sort. If you do a little beforehand, you can knock out some of those improvement projects or stuff like that you can take your time on. So. But let's jump in here with Russ and see what's going on the mortgage side. So, what are we kind of seeing in the mortgage stuff here, Russ?
Yeah, earlier what you mentioned was spot on. We did see the lowest mortgage rates in 3 years in the last 2 weeks. Since then, they moved up a little bit, which isn't uncommon. They ebb and flow. And the reason why they moved up primarily is fear of bond issuances and sell-offs of bonds overseas. The world is interconnected, the globe is interconnected, and so that can affect our mortgage rates here. Now, of course, there's the meetings in Davos with the politicians, and one of the things that they're trying to do there is to try to put a footing under the economy to try to get rates down. We haven't seen what the subsidy programs might be for 2026 yet. Are they going to be looking at longer term fixed rate loans being available? Are there going to be additional subsidy programs or incentive programs? We haven't seen what those are yet. We'll be watching for those in the coming weeks. But generally speaking, Mark, rates are up just a little bit. We do have the personal consumption expenditures report, which is the Federal Reserve Bank's favorite measure of inflation, coming out later this week. It's expected to be fairly tame, so we don't think that that will rattle the market too much later. In fact, next week, a week from now, we have the Federal Reserve Bank Open Market Committee meeting, and the last forecast was that they aren't going to move. So any movement either way could impact the markets, or if they happen to have rhetoric in their post-meeting press conference that the markets aren't expecting, we could see some volatility there. But generally, rates are still good. They're just not quite as good as they were last week.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, it's that time of year where it's starting to get cold out. Some people we saw this was 2 years ago where we had a huge cold, the cold spell that lasted a while, and we saw a dip in numbers and activity. But there was actually some time, that homes that were out there were good priced and good prices for sellers, and even good prices for the buying side. So it's one of those things that, yes, the weather may be crummy out, and too cold to go look at houses, but that's sometimes when you're going to get out there and you're going to be able to get into a house, before the craziness happens when the grass starts turning green and everybody wants to get out there and look at houses. So if that's a plan that you have thinking about getting into, give us a holler. Let's get a game plan for you, get a playbook ready to rock and roll for you so you're ready to go whenever that time is right for you, essentially. So awesome. Well, if you have any questions, reach out to us. Here to help, and we'll